Hello and welcome to Business Today. I'm joined by a very special guest today. It's Hemant Taneja, who's the CEO of General Catalyst. It's a global investment company. Hemant has been out there investing in a lot of companies as a early seed investor and looking at early growth investment opportunities. Couple of them to name, in fact, are Stripe, Snap, Samsara, and Airbnb. He's also an author and entrepreneur. Thank you very much, Hemant, for joining us on this chat on Business Today.
Thanks for having me.
And welcome to Delhi.
Excited to be here.
Or I say welcome back to Delhi.
Yes, welcome back. That's right.
Great. Okay, let me begin by asking you, Hemant. We call GC as a global investment company now, which is looking, of course, beyond just a venture firm. Give us some insights into this transformation.
Yeah, so we describe ourselves as a global investment and transformation company. At our core, what we do is early stage venture capital. So you probably saw earlier this year, we acquired Venture Highway, which is a seed stage firm in India. We did a similar acquisition in Europe as well earlier this year. And so our focus is on working with the world's most ambitious founders as early as possible. And the goal is to work with those founders, create ecosystems, and transform industries. So that's why we describe ourselves as a global investment and transformation company.
Great. What is the scale of GC's investment in India? I believe you started back in 2019. That was a pre-pandemic era to begin with.
We've been investing for many years. We're big believers in the opportunity in India. I think in this new fund that we recently announced, our Fund 12, we'll probably invest about 10% of the capital here. And right out of the gates, it seems like the opportunity set is extremely compelling. So, we're excited about what we're going to be, the kinds of things we'll be backing in the next few years.
Great. And what sectors do you see as the emerging sectors and industries in India that could do well?
Our focus first and foremost is on what is the opportunity inside of India. So what is the way the healthcare sector is going to develop, defense, energy, industrials, consumer services. And equally exciting is what is the role India is going to play in building software companies that are global in nature, that leverage artificial intelligence. And so it's really a mix of both companies being built here for Indian market as well as companies that are here for global markets.
Great. Of course, we're going to get back talking more about technology and AI because they need to be addressed. But tell me a bit, I need to get your view on how do you see India as a third geopolitical power in terms of investment opportunities from that perspective?
Yeah, look, it's really interesting dynamic. So India is a fast-growing economy. You're seeing bipolarity in the world today with the technology ecosystem of the West and the Chinese technology ecosystem. I think it's pretty clear that as India emerges as a technological power, its values and its systems are more aligned with the West. So I do think there's going to be a really interesting collaboration between US and India as well as India and Europe in the kinds of opportunities that get created. And, India is a huge technological power. I think it's going to be really one of the advanced markets when it comes to software and artificial intelligence.
Great. What kind of similarities and differences do you see among US, India, and Europe when it comes to the policy behavior, to the investment strategy behavior?
So overall, our belief is captured in a theme that we call global resilience. Mm-hmm. So what we think is every country in this next phase is thinking through how they are resilient in critical industries. Critical industries to us are healthcare, fintech, energy, industrials, defense. And what's happening is that businesses that get built in each of these markets is trying to make sure it takes care of the opportunity that is local first and foremost. Now, the local opportunity is different. In Europe, it's a largely an export market. So they're thinking a lot about how do they actually preserve their existing industry in automotive and industrials. In India, it's a growth market. And we think it's got a tremendous opportunity, as we saw in the fintech sector, to leapfrog a lot of what these societal systems are going to look like. So what is the healthcare system going to look like here? How do you think about the next generation energy mix? Sort of areas like that. And so I think there's a huge amount of innovation that's going to end up happening in India that will then become a blueprint for the rest of the world as well, as we have seen with Aadhaar and UPI and the other systems here.
That's great. Talking a bit on the technological perspective, and I'm going to bring in an analogy with China because we haven't spoken about China yet. Tell me, what are the parallels do you draw between India and China with India's technological growth now versus China's 20 years?
Yeah, look, I think the kind of high growth China went through over the last 20 years, India is going to have a similar opportunity this time around. The difference is China is top down, and India, I often call it the sleeping giant of entrepreneurship. I feel like it's waking up because there's been so many interesting examples of companies that have gone public and become enduring businesses. I think that just activates the next generation of entrepreneurs. And so I think it's going to be much more grassroots. In terms of the way innovation gets created, it's much more entrepreneurial. There's when you think about the opportunity in India, all the way from infrastructure to communications to software, everything is a growth opportunity as far as we can see today.
Yeah, but would it not be very ambitious to say that India and US could take over what China has been doing for a long time now? Could it be a balance rather?
Look, I think the re-globalization of supply chain is real. There's a lot of manufacturing opportunity from China that is coming India's way. What I think would be really powerful, and I think this is where you're going, is if there's a collaboration model between US and India in terms of how a supply chain gets created and there's a cycle of innovation across the two nations. I think that'd be really compelling because democratic values, there's a huge Indian diaspora that runs a lot of the technology companies in the US. So cultural alignment is there as well. And so actually one of the reasons we're here is because we're very focused on catalyzing this corridor and having our investment strategy be driven by some of that as well.
Great. Let's talk a bit about the startup system. What do you think of the emerging Indian startup ecosystem?
It's incredibly exciting. I think as we have seen through the investing we have done ourselves and the portfolio that our Venture Highway team, which now is our India operation, has created, there are a lot of category-defining companies that are getting created. It's companies like Cred, Zepto, and others that were Spinny and others that were involved in. So it's very exciting. I think the entrepreneurs are building businesses with a lot of ambition, increasingly a lot of rigor, and first principles thinking. What works in India and the kinds of business models that'll take hold here aren't necessarily what worked in the West. And so that is the exciting part for us, is to actually be open-minded to the kinds of business models and technologies that are going to take hold here.
Great. How strong is the relevance of technology, Hemant, when you are analyzing and studying a particular investment opportunity in a startup?
Look, for me, when I'm looking at a business, I first and foremost look at the people, and I look at their motivations, what's driving them, what's the core insight they're working with. We always want to see that technology is a leverage point. It creates economic leverage in the business. But it's not led by, is there sort of a particular technology and that's what makes the business exciting. It's the people that make the business exciting.
Great. And how does the whole approach of concept of responsible innovation be taken up in your perspective, in GC's perspective, when you're looking at startups?
Look, we're deep believers that the best investments are in companies that compound for a long time. And the only companies that get to compound for a long time are the ones in the interest of society. So I think if you have responsible innovation as an input to how you think about building a company, the product, the business model, thinking about all the stakeholders, being inclusive, sustainable, I think the more you think about that, the more resilient and enduring a business you create. And so for us, it's a mindset and the mechanisms required to create the best returns.
So it's the mind that does the magic for you.
It does. I think there's a false choice between purpose and profit. And if you can just build businesses with that orientation from the beginning, we think you will create superior returns.
Yes, and I also see the mantra that you've spoken about across various forums in the past is that you do look at a long-term success rather than those short-term strategies. That's conscious decision, right?
Absolutely. Look, I think great companies get built in these moments where they have to thread the needle between short-term tensions and short-term decisions and what's best in the long term, and navigating those decisions carefully. And so we're always pushing our entrepreneurs to think about having a sense of true north and core values in the long term, and that guide them in the short term when things are frankly highly ambiguous.
Great. And there are many such great companies that have come out of India. So tell me, what do you think of the Indian entrepreneurial spirit on a global startup ecosystem scale?
Look, I think the Indian entrepreneur today believes they're going to build global companies. They believe that if they can build products for the Indian market, which generally tends to be complex, cost sensitive, that they will have a global market opportunity. So I think that ambition is great to see. And you're going to see more and more companies that get built. They gain market share and become market leaders here first, but they will have global ambitions. And that's the kind of founders we ultimately want to be backing.
When we started this interview, you spoke about technology and infrastructure both. So I'll come back to infrastructure because that is what India is also banking big on. In fact, the government is wanting to spend more and more on building the country's infrastructure. Do you think on this perspective, will lessons from US and Europe help India to kind of have a clearer pathway in the coming future?
Look, I'm always careful about not overlearning from what happened in US and Europe. Like if you look at the healthcare system, for example, there's a lot of choices that were made in the US around payer-provider business models that frankly aren't ultimately enduring. And there's a lot of transformation happening there. So I don't think you want to overlearn from there. And plus, if you think about India, it's a highly populous country. It's got a lot of infrastructure that needs to be transformed. So I think here is much more of a transformation opportunity. And so you don't want to overlearn, but there is so much infrastructure progress that has happened over the last 15 years here, and I think that's going to continue to happen. And every time you have better infrastructure, and to me, infrastructure is physical and digital, right? I mean, Aadhaar is infrastructure, and a lot of the highways and roads getting built is infrastructure. Every time India makes progress on that, it gets easier to then build companies on top of that.
Yeah.
And so with every year of that progress, your entrepreneurial activity is going to be that much more successful.
Do you think there's a challenge that the country faces when it comes to its policy making, something that could be done better?
I think policy making is challenging everywhere, not just in India, because there are many stakeholders, and you are navigating ambiguity on what these societal systems should look like. But I'm pretty impressed with all the work that's been done here. I think the creation of these fintech platforms, the intentionality behind them, to create an ecosystem and make it inclusive, it's been remarkable. So I'm actually a big believer that policy design in India generally gets reasonably well thought through in that context.
Great. And how does GC view this India's growing efforts towards inclusive capitalism?
Look, India has to focus on that. You've got a very small population that has an affluent life here. So a lot of the focus is about how do you uplift everybody. So, how do the tier 2 and 3 cities become more vibrant, and there's more opportunity there. So by definition, I think some of the biggest ideas here are going to be the ones that cater to, the bottom of the pyramid as opposed to catering to the most affluent, because that's where the market size is. And if you can successfully create products and services for that population, the market is enormous. So I do think the best businesses here fundamentally are going to be focused on inclusive capitalism.
Great. One quick question on the health sector. I see that GC takes a keen interest in the healthcare sector. What are GC's plan in the coming year?
In the US, we've been driving a lot of healthcare transformation. We work with about 20 of the largest health systems there, and very focused on their transformation to a proactive, affordable, accessible system. It's something we call health assurance. And in India, my personal desire is that we don't go down the path of, there's insurance in a classic sense, and then there's providers, and then there's a misaligned business model. Can we actually, from the beginning, architect a health assurance vision? And more akin to value-based care and the way that got built in the US. So we're searching for founders that are fundamentally wanting to help architect the system in that direction. We're working with Loop Health, which is one of the local companies run by a great founder who thinks that way. I think there's a lot of work to do in that regard, and so we're specifically seeking out founders that share that point of view.
Yeah, and India is currently on this cusp of trying to bring technology aggressively with healthcare, but it's a long way to go.
Healthcare is a complicated market. It will take a long time, but you are talking about, again, building infrastructure for 1.5 billion people in a critical industry. So it will take time, but it's also a great market opportunity.
Great. As we come to the end of this interview, I'm going to ask you on a lighter note, of course. The COP is parallelly running. Tell me a bit about your interest in the climate change. I've seen you talk a bit on sustainability across.
Look, energy and sustainability is a core pillar of responsible innovation for us. And we also think it's an enormous market opportunity. So you want to create solutions that we call advanced energy, which is clean, affordable, and secure. Not only is that something that's necessary to uplift everybody's lives, as a tech industry, I actually think we have a even greater responsibility to be part of that transition, because in some ways we are the biggest consumers of energy. You could argue tech is the dirtiest industry now, because we especially with all the data centers, all the work required to make progress in AI. So it's our obligation to also then think about how do you drive the energy transition towards clean, affordable, secure solutions everywhere in the world.
Great. Thank you very much, Hemant, for speaking with us and all your valuable insights, especially on the whole responsible innovation for startups. We wish GC all the luck for their growth strategy plans in India. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.